I have a bear case that I actually constructed after this video. The stock could go to 150, in my opinion. That's the 10%, risky bear case. If affordable models are delayed, if China tariffs actually stop semi-production and cybercab production, which they totally could, or delay it. If then there's disappointment with the FSD launch and robotaxis and the market tanks, which it also totally could, I think the stock could go all the way down to core valuation of just the core business. But we have to think on a timeline. If that all happens in a bear case, so bull case is we are at 600 in July. Bear case is we are at 150, right, in August. So that's a wide range. But on a timeline towards June 2026, what are the probabilities? And then when I do the math on that or the estimations, I come to the conclusion there is a 90% or higher chance that within the next 15 months, they will deliver all these green metrics. And I'm pretty sure I'm right about these percentages. So then the question is, what do you do? What is your investment? What's your options, stock investment strategy to capture that curve, that distribution?
Tesla is at the center of the eye of the storm of the AGI revolution, and it's starting now, this year, with the introduction of Robotaxi. Is Tesla stock then destined to skyrocket this June? My guest today believes this is a Goldilocks moment and that it will not be a sell the news situation. He'll explain why, and he'll also walk us through his step-by-step analysis of what he sees happening. For the stock to skyrocket, he has a list of things that must happen. What's even more valuable is his list of probabilities over the next 12 months. Joe Bhakdi is an economist, technology entrepreneur, and YouTuber covering Tesla and the coming age of AGI. He's also founder of pioneerlands.net, a free community for Tesla investors and everyone excited to build the future. Welcome, Joe. Thank you very much for joining me today.
It's amazing to be here, Herbert.
So I saw your video. You have a great YouTube channel. You have a combination of the stocks and investments, and then other societal topics. But the one that you just did recently, of course, is Tesla, and you're covering Tesla. What's going to happen in June with the Robotaxi? Been having this conversation with a number of folks. Give us a little update or sort of summary of what you're going to cover today.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, everyone, it's all the buzz. We have, I think on Monday, when is it, 22nd? So very, very soon, I think Monday or Tuesday, the earnings call for Tesla. And, the conviction of a lot of people is it's all about June. Like, will they actually launch Robotaxi? What are the announcements going to be? And then, of course, the big question, if it's confirmed, the timeline, and most people assume it is confirmed because we hear so much buzz from Elon and the team. What is that event all about? Right? The last event, the iRobot event, was kind of a sell the news, and it was a little fluffy. It was beautiful, but for investors, like, what is this? There's no numbers. There's a bunch of dancing robots. Well, are we looking at the same thing in June, where it's more like, oh, nice little show, but there's no substance here? I don't believe so. The whole event in June is designed as something, as the opposite of this iRobot event, as a true commercial pilot launch that will deliver all the numbers and metrics that will drive Tesla stock through the roof under certain conditions. Of course, because it's hard metrics, they need to deliver. But here we have a real shot in basically blueprinting the entire future economics of autonomy. Of course, now we have to look at it probabilistically. That's kind of my specialty. How do we quantify timelines, quantify stock prices on a timeline, and quantify risk? Because nothing is sure, right? So the question for me is, what is the probabilistic outlook from today to a point in time X in the future, where we can be sure that Tesla nails autonomy? And is this point in time June and July this year? That would be very nice, right? 100% chance you just buy a ton of options and you become a billionaire. Or is it not clear? Of course, it's not clear, but what percentages are we looking at? And that's what I basically covered in my short video, where it's all about the question, well, what do I expect happens in June? What can we be sure of? What can we not be sure of? And should certain things not happen in June, or if there is a delay or a technical hiccup or some disappointment, there is no cyber cap, there is only, worst disappointment would be, of course, a total delay. I think that's very unlikely. Another disappointment, in my opinion, a huge disappointment, in my opinion, would be drivers, right? If you basically have humans sitting there, that's a big, downer. even though technically it's not a big difference, but visually it's a disaster, in my opinion. If you say it's autonomy and then there are drivers sitting, not touching the steering wheel, that would be stupid. So there, how likely is it that launches with a number of cybercaps? How likely is it that it launches with a blend, 10 cybercaps, 40 Model Ys, versus pure cybercaps, maybe 40 cybercaps manually built, all possible, which would be much better from the impact side. Then, are there any hiccups? If it launches and with cybercaps, we get 2 green lights. Next question is, are there hiccups? Do we have, this thing crashed, or they constantly get stuck and people take videos? That would be bad. And then it continues, right? When do we know the metrics? If, let's assume we have a third green light, it's cybercaps and there's no hiccup, you see them all driving around, then I'm getting very bullish because people will think, wow, that's crazy. Then the next question is, when do we get the metrics? How much do you pay per mile? Will they drop below critical points, $1.5 per mile or even $1 per mile? Or do they show a clear roadmap how to get there very quickly? When do we know COGS? Are we under 30 cents, or do we have a path for under 30 cents? And so there is a completely possible probability that we hit all these green points. And if that happens, I think the stock is absolutely through the roof in summer. And then what I basically did is put a percentage probability on what is the probability that all these points are hit and we get the metrics in the earnings call in July. So the stock goes 500, 600 plus, which I'm very convinced that this would happen if that happens. And I came to a 30% probability that this actually happens, which is actually insanely high. But do you want to bet do you want to sell your house and everything and buy call options out of the money at 600 expiring in July? No, because you have a 70% chance of losing your entire money. So then my next thought was, okay, if I put a 30% chance on this, which is high, but I have like a certain, I get the vibes that there is more coming than people think. What about the other 70%? So something, I have a bear case that I actually constructed after this video. The stock could go to 150, in my opinion. That's the 10%, risky bear case. If affordable models are delayed, if China tariffs actually stop semi-production and cybercap production, which they totally could, or delay it. If then there's disappointment with the FSD launch in robotaxis and the market tanks, which it also totally could, I think the stock could go all the way down to core valuation of just the core business. But we have to think on a timeline. If that all happens in a bear case, so bull case is we are at 600 in July. Bear case is we are at 150, right, in August. So that's a wide range. But on a timeline towards June 2026, what are the probabilities? And then when I do the math on that or the estimations, I come to the conclusion there is a 90% or higher chance that within the next 15 months, they will deliver all these green metrics. And so plus there's Optimus coming also at a 90% chance with a commercial pilot by mid of next year, because there's pressure, as you know best, Herbert. Like there is pressure on the robots. And so that gives me, besides the 600 and 150 August range, which is a little insane, the range, but that is worst case, best case, 30%, worst case, 10%. There's all the other percentages in between. But when I stretch it out to mid of next year, I think there is a 90% chance that this thing goes vastly above 600. And I'm pretty sure I'm right about these percentages. So then the question is, what do you do? What is your investment? What's your options, stock investment strategy to capture that curve, that distribution? So that's how I view the situation.
Fantastic. Yeah. Great summary overview of what we're going to cover today. It's going to be fun. So first of all, thank you for putting down each of these line items that we'll discuss. And then it's all about probabilities, right? Which is likely to happen, what's not likely to happen. It's all about that. And then basically your conclusion is that if you stretch it out to 12 months from now, next June, it's over 90% chance that at that point, Robotaxi is going to be, kind of understood what the value is, what the real impact is to Tesla, the company, and then the stock should start reflecting it. But in the meantime, in June, there's probabilities. So this is great. I think the first thing you did say, which makes sense, which we'll cover right now, is that in order for Tesla stock to even move, despite a lot of things that might show up in terms of the program, it's the economy, the macro.
Yes.
That has to be in place. If the economy is a shit show and we're all in big trouble, it doesn't matter. Robotaxi rolls out. That's no one's going to have money to invest. They're all going to be too afraid to invest. So why don't we start with that, but keep this part here short. Let's get right to the product of Tesla's Robotaxi, but let's just cover what you're thinking might happen with the economy first.
Yeah, I got a lot of traction on my macro geostrategy videos. Surprisingly, I just did them for fun. But this is a very complicated topic. But I have reasons to believe that the Trump team is actually pretty competent. There is a lot of movement behind the scenes across the world. It's very clear that the EU is already heavily in the US court behind the scenes because strategically China makes no sense. They're in the same boat or worse boat than the US. So the deals with the EU will happen, and it will not be a China-EU coalition. So China will be under pressure. At the same time, the rhetoric has already come down, and outreach from both sides, China and US, is happening. They need to find a solution, both of them. And I think it's also clear that Trump's goal is 10% or less tariffs across the board. And so I think we are navigating towards that. The market has already recovered quite a lot. The VIX has dropped to under 30, and the fear and greed index is at 15 or something. So it's like all relaxing. And you could tell from the market behavior that the market has no real appetite for a crash or a bear market. So they're looking for positive signs. I think the pressure is on all sides to resolve this. So I have a high conviction this will not escalate. We have reached the peak escalation already, which means by June, there should be more peace of mind. That does not mean there's not supply chain disruptions and cost issues. But I don't think there will be major disruptions, and the panic will be gone.
Okay, that's a great, good summary. It's your opinion, but it's looking like you're pretty optimistic that by June things should be over. People,
of course, it's probabilistic, right? Everything I say is probabilistic. It's like, of course, there's a 2% risk we have war with Taiwan, right? So it's not.
Yeah.
I mean,
more than 2%.
There's always risk.
Yeah. But there's people now saying that there's a 60% risk that there's going to be a recession, but then there's others who will say, yeah, sure, but recession, yes, we are probably in a recession now, and it's going to be short, even if we do.
But I mean, also to this point, I mean, there's also my theory. Neither a recession nor a bear market is a big problem for Tesla, because both could happen.
Let's discuss that, because I think it's important to understand your position on that. Because what I've learned in the last 4 years is Tesla's a growth company, and it's a high beta stock, and companies like that, particularly Tesla, which is, you got your auto business, and that has to be like successful and stable. If that's falling, nobody's going to invest in these stories of Robotaxi and bots. And the economy matters. If the economy is really bad and a risk-off environment, few people are going to raise the stock price. But this time is different. It's Robotaxi, which is a significant invention, a significant leap, a disruption. You got driverless cars. So is it possible that this Robotaxi, which is a driverless car, could then overcome any kind of minor recession or economy? I still don't think so, number one. And I still believe that it's going to be a dip-toe scenario for the next 6 months, so that it's not this, I'm coming into Austin and I'm going to have 10,000 Robotaxis and it's going to disrupt Uber, and now it becomes like massive money making. It's going to be very much, there's going to be hundreds of cars. We're going to do it slowly. There will be a driver, by the way. It might be a driver still, just because that's the way normal legality is. The very first weeks, there's a human driver there. Then you remove the driver. Then you have remote drivers. And that's how kind of normally other Robotaxi services had to launch. But that's what I'm expecting. Very slow, incremental improvements. Once we've tested a little bit, go expand over the next 6 months. Okay, so yeah. Do you think that Robotaxi is a big enough situation that despite some sort of version of macro issues, that would still raise the stock, could still go up?
I mean, I think we are And that's why I have more a 15 months perspective than a 6 months perspective, because I can be sure over 15 months this is going to work. Same with Optimus, or similar to with Optimus. I think, and that's more like a gut feeling than science, right? I feel we see more and more decoupling indications. For example, in the crash, the stock behavior of Tesla, you could already see that Tesla stopped moving just with the market, right? It seems like there is a bottom. We have reached some bottom here at 225 or something, where the stock really doesn't want to go lower because there's too much anticipation. Of course, if there's a crash or something, I'm saying a bear market, not a crash. And a crash, the bets are off, right? But if it's just a grinding bear market, I think because we are now in the age of AGI, we are already in the age of AGI, and these Mag 7, I think they have real decoupling opportunities even in a bear market. Because a bear market does not mean a crash. It means like, we are not getting anywhere. We're always dropping 0.5% per month, and it's just not moving, and it's a drag. That's a bear market for me. And I think in this situation, stocks can absolutely rally if they can decouple and show, oh my God, Nvidia had an enormous $1 trillion order, or Microsoft's,
regardless of the recession of consumers buying. Yeah.
Exactly.
And more proof that AI is actually productive, causing productivity increases.
Which will happen end of this year. I think I can also talk about some behind the scenes insights I have here from CEOs in Europe that have told me crazy things that I would not have thought possible.
They're replacing actual employees. Yeah. So Tom Lee, Mafundtrat, I just did a show on that where he did his show, and he basically said that Tesla stock is sold out. When there was a crash, 220, right? They fell to the 220 mark. He called it sold out, which is that there's a few people who have Tesla stock that is willing to sell anymore. We already got to that point. And so he believes that because we already got to that point, that's that base, and that it's going to now, regardless, like you said, even with other pressures, it probably won't. It'll just kind of sit there or jump. Yeah.
And it's really like the math is very simple. If you have a new revenue stream that analysts accept and put in their little sheets, everything changes, right? And that is Robotaxi. So the question is, at what point do they do this? And I think there's so much hype, and Adam Jonas and Dan, like they all have it already prepared. So I think we are a little bit different here. Normally they would drag their feet and say, well, now it's only Austin, it's just 100, let's wait, we want to see more cities. But in a hype situation like this, it's kind of bridging the gap. We have the early believers like us, we see it, and we are willing to invest before the proof. And then there are the latecomers, the Wall Street analysts that only do it with complete proof of all the metrics plus growth. I think here we have a situation where this gap is narrowing, where the analysts are willing to do this earlier, to have some leaps of faith, not complete leaps of faith, but that's definitely happening. So I do not think Adam Jonas or Dan Ives are going to wait until, there are 10 cities over 2 years proving the growth. They are going to jump in and say, no, unlock is now, earlier. The question is, when is that? And I think it's somewhere around where the metrics are really reported in an earnings call, where you have a critical number of hundreds of these things and a roadmap for the next cities. And it's believable that this timeline is now happening, plus CyberCap scale. And this could all happen in July. I mean, in the best case, right? It could be that they say, look, we have 100 of these things. They are booked. Here are the COGS. Here's the price per mile. Q4, we launch CyberCap at scale production, maybe Q1. And we have already signed 5 more cities. Here are the cities. I mean, that could it's absolutely in the range of possibility that in July they say that. I'm saying 30%. So, and I think then, especially if the market is positive, then that could raise like crazy. But if everyone is super negative, they could say, wait, whatever, let's wait a little bit. So
okay, yeah, I'm normally a very optimistic person, and but right now, as I've been watching these institutional analysts, how they behave, and just comparing it to how Nvidia skyrocketed. I did a show with Cern Basher, and he pointed out that the moment Nvidia skyrocketed was not when they launched their AI chip. And Jensen Huang's going, this thing's going to revolutionize everybody. Yeah, sure. Everybody said, sure, whatever. It's not even the first earnings call. It was like subsequent earnings call that kept showing that the numbers keep going up. And there was so much resistance from investors still saying, yeah, it's a one-off. AI is a blip. This is not a real change. But every quarter it kept going up, and then people realized that this is a real thing. It could be that, same thing with Robotaxi. I laugh at these institutional analysts who say, I believe in Robotaxi. I know Tesla has solved it. And then when you actually drill down to what they actually will say, they'll go, it's in 2040, and there'll be lots of competitors, but Tesla will own at least 20% of the market by 2040, and it won't roll out till then. And so when I bring down the numbers to today, it's a small blip. And it's like, what? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, these people, I think actually I'm completely on the accelerist side, but my biggest concern is not so much the analyst and everything, because it's such a huge, it's the biggest retail stock in the world. So I think retail plays a huge role. And I mean, it's crazy when you look at the retail numbers. It's insane. Over 10 million retail shareholders and a mass. It's by far the biggest retail stock, and retail has a real power here. My biggest concern, why I'm saying it's only 30%, and why I personally do not bet on a run-up in June or July, is I have concerns about the technology, to be totally frank. I think I was always skeptical on a tactical level. Version 13 is just completely not there. I mean, it's amazing, it's magic and everything, but you need to be flawless. You cannot have critical interventions. You cannot have interventions where you would have had a crash. It's just not possible unless you have drivers sitting there. But even if they're launched with drivers, you want to basically be in a situation when you launch it that you don't need them, even if they sit there. And when I see all the YouTube videos of the testers, of course, it's amazing technology, but I think we need to get another 100 or 1,000x better, which could happen now. Maybe they have version 14, and maybe it is 100x better. But the problem is you cannot have any critical intervention ever that leads to a crash, because you can't just crash. That would be really bad.
Okay. Well, just to clarify, my understanding of what's going to happen is I drive version 13. It's magical and it's amazing. It is ready for Robotaxi today. But the way that it will roll out is that you will have a human driver at the very beginning for the first weeks. Then they take the human driver out and they replace it with remote drivers, people sitting some data center watching every Tesla that's driving. And despite that you don't see somebody sitting on the front seat, there's somebody there that's watching it on a one-to-one basis.
And that's my main hope, by the way. I always said the reason I'm not totally bearish on it, I'm very bearish on this thing just driving itself in June perfectly, because that's what you need.
But this is what
the remote drivers are good.
This is what Waymo does. Yeah. So everybody thinks Waymo is solved the problem. Look at them, how great they are. There's a remote driver. Now the question is it 1-to-1? Is it 1-to-5? Is it 1-to-100? It's very likely closer to 1-to-1.
It doesn't even matter, in my opinion, because even if it's 1-to-1, no one knows. And then you can always argue, now it's 1-to-2, now it's 1-to-3.
That's my point. Yeah.
But Tesla has to show that. I mean, my concern is not, as I said, I think 90% chance they get maybe even to real autonomy in the next 15 months. My problem is this will be the first launch, the first time we see this commercially. Like, will they just nail it at their first attempt perfectly?
Which is actually a possibility. Yeah. There's a high
30% possibility.
Version 14 unsupervised is 100 times better than what we see now. High possibility, because it's basically you can map it out based on compute power. And they already have the compute. They're already using it now. Everybody's confident. And I do think that when Elon and the team thinks about Robotaxi unsupervised, they're talking unsupervised, like as in unsupervised, like no remote drivers. But I'm just saying that worst case scenario, fine, they'll have a remote driver for the first 6 months, because it's a dip-toe scenario. They want to test and make sure it just doesn't have any negative outcome. And so why not? Why not have a
that's why I'm like,
just this is checking it.
That's why we should have these conversations, because it's in a way we have to have these discussions also to have the faith, because it's so crazy and disruptive and no one really sees it now. So we have to triangulate. I am skeptical that they just out of the gate completely nail it in a way that swings all the analysts say it's game over. They're just going to roll this out all over the place immediately. but it could happen.
Mhm.
And I think over the next 15 months, it will happen.
Exactly.
Because
Agree with you.
we're talking about a situation where, you know, it's like I don't know if you can say it on air, but I always make the joke. It's like porn. You know it when you see it, like, because there's this like it's you know, and it's like, oh, is it an erotic movie or is it porn? And then dudes, it's
You know
impossible to theoretic, but you know it when you see it. You can't describe it, but you're just like, dude, this is porn. It's not erotic. And the same is here. Yeah. Is it lawn? Is it really? It's like you will absolutely know it when you see it, when they have these cyber caps and everyone's just hailing them like crazy.
Yeah. So I drive version 13 on a Model 3 hardware 4. And the hardware for a Model 3 is very different than a Cybertruck or my Model 3 that's hardware 3. The hardware for Model 3 is flawless. And I've been driving it for 3 months. No problem.
So really flawless? You're not scared at all?
No, not scared, and no critical disengagement. Now, and yes, okay, I'm only one driver. It's only 3 months. Even if you can drive for a whole year, 15,000 miles, and there's one critical disengagement, that's still not good enough, right? You need to get to the 700,000 mile for true equal to safety to humans. But I'm saying to you that, you know, this idea that you just for people to understand that you can't just go, oh, I drive it and I don't see it. You know, you got to be sure you're talking about the latest version, hardware 4, and the latest 13. Now, there is a version 14. This is the unsupervised version that they've already about to launch. And
wait, so you know that, Herbert?
Yes.
You know the version 14 exists?
Well, the reason I know it is because you've seen the Tesla saying that these cars are using unsupervised FSD, which is, you know, technically unsupervised. But version 14 is what they're going to use for June. And, you know, and whether or not they're going to use AI5 or not, I've had that debate with, you know, Brian Wang and others to just see if are you going to launch a CyberCab with version hardware 4? I think it's going to be hardware 4.
I mean, that's amazing insight. Thanks for that. I mean, for me, this
just my own opinion, obviously, but you know,
for me, like what we have to construct in our minds and understand where our alpha lies, where Wall Street is blind, is this is a non-trivial thing. This is not the iPhone 16 or something. This is like someone saying we're working on anti-gravity and we can elevate this thing to space with no energy. Yeah. And then people will say like, that's a little crazy. And Wall Street will say, well, even if, like, do you have the Air Force contract? Like, you know, and then it's like, bro, you don't need an Air Force contract. If you show that on TV, your stock will like go up. Believe me, you do not need the revenue. And I think this is something like that. Plus the revenue is already there. So I believe people completely underestimate what it means. I'm just simulating in my mind. Let's say you have 100 cyber cabs driving around in Austin, and you see it on all the YouTube videos. Like, look, hail, in, drop, again and again. Oh, I just paid a third of what I pay Uber, and I will never use Uber again. Uber crashes in Austin, and everyone uses cybercab. I tell you, if this happens, the stock goes through the roof. Because then everyone is going to start, well, what happens if they just roll this out everywhere immediately once they can mass produce cybercabs, which there's zero risk.
Let's talk about that. Okay. So, so I've been a little conservative, right? Because I'm going, even when they roll it out in June, it's going to be dip toe. And so I'm expecting hundreds of Model Ys and cybercabs, let's say 1,000, even that. But everybody will just go, Waymo's done it. Cruise has done it. Chinese car company, Chinese autonomous have done it. So they're not going to go, oh my God, this is our intervention. The next thing is, what price will they offer this at? I think it's going to have to be lower than the standard ride-hail Uber of $2 per mile, which is what Waymo does, $2 a month. In fact, more expensive than Uber. But a lot of people I'm talking to are saying, no, they're going to charge $2 a mile. Why? Well, because A, they want revenue, they want margin, and B, they want to, they don't have enough cars, and they don't want people to to have a bad experience of asking for it and then waiting for it or being denied it. And I'm like, Tesla's not going to launch a Robotaxi, and you got to set the image in the mind of a consumer. This is a Robotaxi. We're doing something so different that no one else can do. they're going to sell it for $1.50. It's going to be less than $2, maybe not $1 yet, maybe not 15 cents. I see that in your analysis here, you've got it because you think it at some point, right? It's going to be less than $1 per mile. I just don't know what do you think what price will they set at the very onset of June to September?
It's a very good question. If they do a low price strategy, if they do a high price strategy, it's a little lame. Okay. If they do a low price strategy, they need to gate it. They need to limit the number of people who are allowed to use it because you do not want wait times. So you need to gate the app access or something. Say like, well, let's start with that many allowed users and do it very cheap. And that would be smart, in my opinion, if you want to deliver numbers. You want to know, well, we limit the total pool of people who can use it to 10,000 or something. Where we have a dial, we can just unlock it on X
maybe
or
just
wherever
Tesla
they want to.
Owners. First Tesla employees, and then they'll go Tesla owners.
Well, Tesla employees would sound too biased, maybe. I mean, I'm thinking from a PR perspective. Ideally, you want some neutral pool or fans, but not necessarily just employees. Of course, you want to prepare it on X. I mean, that would be the absolute killer to add this to X as an option on the app because you need scale. And that would signal something huge. And then basically dial up and down the number of users and control the number of, like, fix the price very low because that is, it depends what they want. If they want maximum buzz, maximum impact on stock price, and maximum lineup for the future, if they want that, who knows? You want basically a gated access so you can control demand. Then you want to maximize demand in that pool by a $1 per mile thing because you want to show, look, we unlocked it for 10,000 people. 100% of the 10,000 dropped Uber. They all went to us, right? And they all have hugely positive reviews, and they totally rant about it, how amazing it is that they paid $5 instead of 15, had no wait times, and it's the perfect experience.
Exactly correct. That's exactly what I agree. It's a brand thing. You can't go launch a Robotaxi and not have a lower price. I just don't understand. That's part of it.
I mean, you could if you were like, it wouldn't be. Who knows all the things they want? But if you want maximum impact, that's what you want.
I agree with you. Okay, so you're saying here that you do think, though, that in June, it's not going to be the sell the news scenario. You think it's different because it's lower price, low disruption of transportation. Wall Street's still absolutely not buying FSD. Explain this slide here.
Well, I wouldn't say, what I'm saying is strategically this time is different, and strategically it's a Goldilocks moment. I cannot predict when Tesla wants to do that. This is the disruptive Goldilocks moment. I don't know if June is just dipping the toes and dabbling around and doing this in December, right? That's what I don't know because I don't know what they can deliver. But my prediction would be what I'm describing here is the critical Goldilocks moment. And I put a 90% chance that they will go for that moment and succeed in the next 15 months. And the question is it out of the gate? Is it 3 months later? Is it 6 months later? But it will happen within 15 months, within 12 months after June. The question if it happens on the front end or the back end is, for me, unfortunately impossible to answer. I would love to know more people at Tesla who tell me these things, but that would be probably illegal. So I'm saying this Goldilocks moment is coming, and it's coming very soon. And if it's coming, this is a $7 trillion market unlock.
Agreed.
And it's not a small unlock. It's a massive unlock.
Well, as soon as that moment comes and that people understand that this is a big difference. And so in my guessing right now, just listening to Elon saying dip toe, he didn't just say dip toe once. He said it 3 times, right? Dip toe, dip toe, dip toe, which means that it's like, okay, we're going to launch something. Then we're going to test to make sure everything works. We want to make sure there's no accidents. Then we'll dip toe and we'll expand. So that's where I'm thinking maybe not the end of this year. It will be somewhere in first quarter of next year when they've expanded. But he did say, right? He did say multiple cities this year. He did say that you're going to be able to buy a Tesla and it will drive it to your home this year, most likely in Austin.
But it's Elon. That's the problem.
Let's see a lot, but still, how crazy is that? So I still will say it won't happen this moment that you're saying, less than $1 a mile, this understanding that really is going to own this city, Austin. In order for that to happen, like they're not going to introduce customer cars into the whole network until second half of next year. So it won't be until the second half of next year when you're going to have 10,000 robotaxis in Austin.
Well, you don't need the customer network for 10,000 in Austin. You could produce them, and you could have cybercabs thrown in. So
interesting.
The whole, I mean, imagine how many cars. I mean, Tesla could easily deploy.
Yeah, they can reserve 5,000 Model Ys and say, "Hey, we're going to own this. It's customer Tesla owned, and it's going to be part of the Robotaxi." They can do that in a month. They get 10,000 in less than a couple of weeks.
They just churn them out, and I mean, that's amazing.
Interesting.
But I also think that cybercabs, I don't know, it's my gut feelings that cybercabs make an enormous difference in perception, because it's a little lame. Anything with a steering wheel is lame. Even like Waymos are the lamest thing I've ever seen.
Yes.
So cybercabs would be very different, because so I hope. I'm not super bullish on it that Cybercab can start production this year because of China and everything. But even if they produce 1,000, they don't need like 100,000 run rate this year. They just need, if they give us 1,000, that would already be absolutely, even 500.
Mind-boggling.
Because if they can deliver, I'm thinking like a shallow person. I'm thinking about, okay, I see this on TV or whatever on YouTube, and there are all these cybercabs driving around, and there's just no people in there but passenger, and they're all happy and pay $1 a mile. Then it's game over for me. Even if they cheat a little bit and they're remote and whatever and handmade cybercabs, who cares? The whole world is going to say, "Oh my God, it's game over." And by the way, one of the most important metrics, in my opinion, maybe even for Wall Street, will be the impact on Uber in Austin. If they can show Uber is dead, they just wiped out 90% of Uber in Austin by September, which they could, by the way.
Yes.
They could. With $1, I mean, it would be death. They will then, that's why I'm thinking Wall Street this time is not going to be so slow, because they're going to say, we cannot miss this. They just wiped out Uber in Austin. Sure, we don't know when the next, but this is very bad for Uber, and it's very good for Tesla. So, that's why I'm saying, what's the dream scenario? The dream scenario is all this works and Wall Street is very dumb. So we have all the metrics, it's clear, and the stock doesn't move. Of course, then we can go crazy. Then we say, well, now we have a wall coming, a forcing function, and we know exactly when. But I do not expect that. I think if this happens, the stock will go up.
I like everything you're saying. You're absolutely correct. I get you. Even Elon has said many times, right? Like, we both own cats, but my cats can sing and dance, but nobody can tell. They both look like cats. And so in our case, we've got a Model Y, and okay, it looks like a normal car. So yeah, it's doing Robotaxi, but like you said, it's not as clear. But if it was cybercabs, it's a lot more, ooh, that's cybercab. Oh, look. Yeah, people will associate it with Robotaxi, and that there's no, it's a new futuristic looking car. So they do need to have some number of it, 500 to 1,000 by the end of this year, to really ignite the imagination. Yeah.
But I'm just emphasizing, even though we are both excited about it, I think we both agree that this is super disruptive and it is coming now. I know my viewers, and probably also yours, and people who are excited about the stock and maybe who are new to investing or dabble in options. I mean, I can absolutely see emotionally, like Elon coming out and saying, oops, 3 months delayed. And so, I mean, if you have to have these probabilities in mind, and you cannot bet on a narrow time window, because it just can be completely derailed short term.
Okay, let's go through your list here, because I thought this was a good list of things that must happen for any kind of, otherwise everything will be delayed. So it's got to have no accidents. You have a critical mass. The minimum you thought was at least 40 cars, cybercabs. 40 cybercabs minimum. Obvious path to $1 per mile, which they, by the way, already have 20, right? Because We Robot event, they had 20. I mean,
I hope so. I hope they are deployable. I hope they're deployable in the wild, right? Gotcha. So, I mean, that's why we need cybercab. I'm not saying 100% cybercab, but we need more than 10.
Obvious path to $1 per mile, no complaints, low wait times, report these metrics in July. And like you said, we know it when we see it. So these are just examples of a list that you're saying. Makes sense.
And this number F is very important, because if you have all the metrics but you don't report them, then how do we know, right? So the COGS and the miles per and the wait times. I mean, the question is, when does Tesla bring down the hammer, the anti-Uber hammer, and just reports it? And so you have a one-to-one comparison, and everyone sees Uber is toast. This will be a very important moment.
Agreed with you. And then what are the odds? Okay, let's go through it. That this doesn't work in June. So you're saying about 50% chance it's not going to happen in June.
Over 50% that this doesn't work in June. Yeah. And I'm talking about the whole list. I would say I think it's over 70% that this will not work by July.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Dip toe tells me that, we should not expect this in even this year. I don't think we should expect it this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And the problem is, compared to Optimus, I think on Optimus, we will always be faster than expected. On an FSD, always slower than expected, because the risks are too high. They don't want to mess up, and there's no competition. Whereas in Optimus, everything is the reverse. The risk is much lower, and there's massive competition. And they have to, they're always at risk of falling behind, in my opinion, Tesla, perception-wise, on robots. But on FSD, there's just no competition.
Especially if he wants to have the robots ready for the trip to Mars in a couple of years. So this is funny that you're saying this. I don't know if you know, but this is what I've been saying for the last 6 months. I've been saying that I'm very excited about Robotaxi. I know this works. I know that it's going to happen. I know that June's going to happen. But because of his comments about dip toe, I was just conservative and saying, I'm not so sure that everybody's jumping up that in June, July, the stock's going to skyrocket. I'm like, you know what? I'd be more comfortable saying that it's going to happen in the first quarter of next year, because you're not going to see a penetration of a city until that point. They're going to do multiple cities. It's going to be small. It's going to be just slow rollout. But by the end of this year, I do think that, like you said, that there might be 1,000 robots. He said 5,000. They're shooting for a run rate of 10,000. Let's say that you have 2,000 robots, 1,000 robots. Even that number is so big, it's unfathomable. It's like hard for us to understand what 1,000 robots is. Imagine 1,000 robots filling up a gymnasium. It's a lot. And if they
what's a Legion? A Legion is 5,000 or something.
A Legion is 5,000, and he's repeated that several times. But let's say he's wrong. It's not 5,000. Let's say just even 1,000 robots in Giga Texas, if they're all doing useful work, pick and place, I still think that will jog the investors' excitement faster than a Robotaxi program. And so that's where I'm going. If that happens by this year, I still think the stock could rise at the end of this year because of that, not because of Robotaxi per se.
That's also why I'm saying 90% chance. I'm working on a video where I'm thinking about putting $1,000 price tag on the stock and say, I think we have a very high chance of hitting this in 2026, maybe in mid 2026. I'm still debating it.
Yeah.
Because on top of Robotaxi, you have this Optimus thing. And I had this video on this. On a meta level, on a meta entrepreneurial level, what are the real drivers of speed? And the biggest driver of all is competition. And on FSD, I mean, there's just there will never be competition all the way to 2028 or something, when this stuff maybe get commoditized by some ASI. So how does it work? You're sitting there, you're an engineer, it's like, oh, do this, let's launch this. Elon makes some pressure, but that's it, right? So you can delay a little bit. On Optimus, I just saw even Boston Dynamics, which I find super annoying, but their new robot is like, this is crazy. Have you seen how this thing moves? This is like completely like a human. And then all the Chinese and Figure One. So on Optimus, it's very clear. If Tesla messes up in any way, there will be competitors from here to Beijing lining up, right? And so
literally, yeah.
And they are already, I'm sure Optimus is behind on multiple metrics compared to specific companies. Like, oh, this company is way better in dancing and movements. This has scary, good AI implementation. Like, they have pressure. They get destroyed if they're not cautious. Of course, they're ahead, in my opinion. But that is the best. And the hurdles are much lower to get pilots done. And a lot of companies are willing to already pay for this, probably, in putting in pilots. So I think the hardware is overestimated. I hear a lot of robot experts who say, "Oh, the hands and blah blah blah." It's like, really, guys? They're spending $3 billion, and you don't. The hardware is not the problem. So the question is, when is the seamless intelligence, embodied intelligence working? But that is also developing super exponential. So this is all happening in 2026, in my opinion.
Let's see. Okay, so first of all, a lot of the demos that we watch, especially the Chinese ones, I know that a lot of them are very faked, that they're cobbled together. So do not watch a video and go, oh my God. Okay. Now, same time, they're telling you something. There's definitely improvements and things are moving, but don't just jump to that conclusion. The second thing with the hardware is it's one thing for it to be able to, let's say, move the elbow and pick up something, but it's another thing for it to do it for 6 months straight and not break. And so that's the challenge that all these bots are making, is having something that, like our elbow won't break for 50 to 100 years, right? It's so well designed. They were nowhere near that. Having said that, I think that Tesla has so much money, and like you said, the race is so fast, they will learn a lot more by just launching a product, even if it's not yet 100% scalable. And so this is where, even if they don't decide to not launch Model 3 of their robot, version 3 of their robot, they can launch version 2. And even if they know that that's not going to go, it doesn't, the money's not an issue for them. But can they learn, and can they show that these guys will be able to do even just the version 2? Can it do useful work at the factories?
And also, Harold, what makes me very bullish on Optimus?
Which means that I'm very, very, I believe that the chances that Tesla will actually launch 1,000 robots by the end of this year is a lot higher than many people think. And not because of the reasons they're saying. Oh, they're going, oh, but the hardware's not ready. I agree with you. Oh, but maybe they're not going to have the version 3 ready. I agree with you. But it doesn't mean that Tesla won't go and I'll make the version 2 and I'll make 1,000 of that. The 1,000 is pre-production numbers. It's like, okay, you'll still learn how to create production.
And also, I like meta signals, like not the primary signals, but the secondary signals. And what makes me very bullish on Optimus, that it's like death silence. It's dead silent from Tesla. They say nothing. Right. And so that makes me very bullish, because they see the competition. They don't want to give anything away. And when do you not say anything? It's like dogs that bark don't bite, but dogs that don't bark, they bite. Because, you stop talking when it's like, wait, I need this. I don't need to talk about it anymore. Let's do 1 year. And then
if you're, what I've learned in brand is like, if you're Coke, never mention Pepsi. Never mention anybody who's not nowhere near where you are. Your top dog. Don't talk about them. Don't compare them. If you're Pepsi, always mention the number one. Always say how great you are. Always come out there and try to market yourself.
And also when you're needy, you have to show, like figure one, very needy. It's like, oh, polish the little helmets. Look at our production and look at this, because they need to raise money. They need to keep everyone excited. And Tesla looks like they don't need to keep anyone excited about Optimus.
Except for, they need to hire the top minds. And so every once in a while they drop a video, but that's primarily for recruiting of the best engineers out there to show them, hey, look, we are there. Other than that, they don't need to brag. Yeah. Okay. So in that case, I think we're on the same page there. So this is great. These are the odds. And so just be clear, right? We kind of like, you're basically saying that all these things have to happen, and that by 15 months from now, you're feeling, that the odds that Tesla will 2 to 3 times from here in 15 months is 90%. That's what you're willing to stand by. And the rest is, well, if this, if that, and,
And to put this into like, put the money where the, how do you say this? Where the mouth, something like that, meet. What does it mean? What would I do? I'm looking at leaps, because that's how you bet on this, right? And if I'm wrong, I lose my money, kind of. If you have a 500 strike price call for 2027 at $36, basically with his predictions, like, well, this is nearly a safe bet if I'm right. It's a very good bet, because if it goes to 750, you can do the math, right? You're making basically 250 divided by 40. So you're making 600%. But that's risky, right? If you're wrong, but you have until January 2027. That's how I translate these kinds of things. You can basically, with option strategies, capture that. Of course, I'm hedging my bets and are mostly in stocks because that's why not. Like stocks make you sleep at night. But if you think, well, here's a real mispricing, right? If I see more progress and markets more deteriorating and the stock not moving, this becomes exponentially more attractive. If you think 750 is a pretty safe bet by end of 2026, and you can buy 500 strike call options that expire then, let's say at $20, if we hang out here another 4 months and nothing happens, or it goes down because there's some crazy market thing, then the price could be at $20 for these calls, and then it gets very attractive. So that's how I think about it.
That's how you're doing it. That's your, not financial advice. This is for you, saying that, you believe that if you stretch it out to at least 15 months, then the chances, the probabilities rise a little bit higher. It's less of a bet, less of a
yes,
scary scenario. Oh, okay, though. Great. I like the way that you think. That was very interesting. I'm just trying to, obviously play the devil's advocate. What can happen in the next year or two? So we haven't heard anything about a federal framework for regulatory approval. I think there was a lot of excitement when President Trump won the election because they all said, oh, Elon's going to get it now. And that's why the stock jumped. We haven't heard anything since then. So I'm not yet, we can't put that in the bag yet. We can't say, oh, for sure, this is happening now.
Super, like on this stuff, I'm really not into seeing regulations as a risk. I see other risks. I see maybe there's a technology problem that we don't see and it's actually much harder, whatever, but remote, then Elon can do something stupid. The world can blow up. There can be a Taiwan war. This is more likely. But regulatory risk, here's why I think it's just not a risk. It doesn't really matter if there's a federal framework because analysts it's enough if you have major cities rolling it out fully commercially. If Miami says green lighted, if Austin says it, Dallas, LA, and other people make problems, I don't think, because everyone is going to say there is so much competitive pressure on governments at this point. When you have entire giant metropolises doing this, and you're Berlin or Paris, you can't just sit there and ignore it. You get pressure, you get political pressure. China is then going to do it. So I think either politicians and administration is smart and it goes fast, or they put up resistance, they will be crushed. It's a global competition. Once you have a bunch of major cities doing this, who cares? Of course, it impacts the exact adoption rate, but it can't stop it. And the longer they hold up, the more pressure they get. So I think I don't see it as a big problem.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So there is 10 states in the United States that have already approved or some sort of autonomous ride-hailing program. They're already allowing, let's say, Waymo in there and others. So those are a go. So you got California, you got Austin, you got Texas. And then what will happen is you roll it out in those states, and then Florida will come next. And then several cities will jump up and say, in fact, I think it's the opposite, which is what you're saying. In fact, I think you're going to get races, cities and states jumping up and saying, please let us be next.
And you will be supply constrained because I do not totally believe in this whole owner-based fleets. I think it will be Tesla-owned fleets. So then you have to manufacture it. And so they can't manufacture 10 million cars in 1 year. So like if I take a step back and put my devil's advocate hat on, I really don't see any problem other than technology. So, and with the technology, I'm a skeptic, even though I believe in it, but I believe in it only theoretically with my frontal cortex. I do not yet really believe it. But my frontal cortex tells me, well, this is just clear. It kind of works. So for me, the decisive point will be, I need to see it. And that's why Austin is so important.
It sounds like you're based in Europe, right? So maybe you haven't driven it.
I haven't experienced.
I'm driving it every single day.
Yeah, I have a hardware 4? I had it in Austin. Was it hardware 4? I was still like, it was all finicky. It's like, And then I got like...
I agree with you that regulation is not something I'm concerned about. I think that they'll be chasing after each other. The benefit to a state's economy, if you allow robo-trucking, for example, is so big, it's so huge that they are all chasing and looking and researching this, because and if one state gets it before the other states in the US, for example, it's a huge benefit to their
And that's also why,
countries.
Herbert,
So,
good that you're saying this. Like, I think I'm an economist. That's why I'm so insanely bullish on this, because there's one thing that a lot of people totally ignore and overlook, especially the Waymo people. Everything comes down to economics. And if you launch a stupid Waymo, they cost $200,000 and cost $3 per mile. It's a joke. It's a total joke. What it's a joke.
No benefit.
There's nothing. You have nothing.
Yeah.
But if you launch a $1 per mile thing that has a 60% margin, it's so game over that people don't even understand. It's like the most boring things are the most important ones. If you deliver an energy system that costs 2 cents per kilowatt, it might be boring, but you will own the entire planet. Yeah. And you will own it within 6 months, the entire planet. That's how strong economics are. It's like, it's game over. And that's the whole point, that the economics of Tesla are crystal clear. They can easily do it under $1 once it works. So they just have to show it works.
So back to, the technology, and I am much more bullish on that. And then the reasons are not only that I'm experiencing it, and I know, it's that I know that there is a correlation between critical intervention improvement with compute power going up. And I am tracking and calculating when is Tesla going to be able to increase their compute power, and then therefore how much of improvement are we expecting. And then the other side of that is, well, there's ways that you can reduce critical intervention issues, right? And I don't think it's some people go, oh, Tesla will never do geofencing. Why not? Why not? Tesla will never do this thing where we'll avoid complex left turns. Why not? If these have increased chances of a critical intervention and you want to do tiptoes, then why not start that way for the first year? And then as you then catch up with that, then you add it back in. So there's ways that you can do this that doesn't, and especially since we think we'll be supply constrained, you might not have enough cars at the beginning. You want to limit it. So why not just go ahead and limit it to, the way Waymo launched was all the grid cities. They started with grid cities because it was easier to navigate those grid cities. That's what you do too.
I mean, Waymo is, of course, Waymo. I'm always a non-believer in Waymo and also Google. So if these people can have them drive around,
that's the point.
Tesla should also be able to do it, and Tesla will definitely be able to do it much cheaper. So maybe you're right. I mean, as I said, my frontal cortex tells me Herbert is right and all these guys are right, but I'm not there yet. Whereas I have complete convictions on the technology in June, because that's the missing piece for me. The rest is clear. Plus cybercabs. We need the cybercabs because if it's Model Ys, it's a little too Waymo. It looks too Waymo. It's like old stupid series.
Well, I mean, it might be 50-50, right? Just like we had in We Robot, 50% of the cars are cybercabs.
I mean, it's also like they don't need a production line for a cybercab to produce 200. No. So
even 1,000.
So
even
1,000.
That's what Jeff Lutz was saying. Like these are, yes, it's a lot, but it's not, it's not uncommon for a company to create thousands of a product and it's pre-production. Like you're still learning what you need to learn.
I mean, one big problem, very tactically also on this tight timeline, is China, because the current tariff is like a complete disaster, right? You can't do anything right now, 145%. So there is a complete disruption of rare earths, like whatever, that they need, but they will have stockpiles. I don't know how it works. It will be resolved again in June, but this is exactly the time when they might need something. So this is a little annoying, but yeah, I think my prediction, I'm sticking to it. I think next 15 months or 12 months after June, there's a 90% chance they're going to nail it. And nailing this is so enormous. That's a $7 trillion problem to solve. And I think the analysts this time will be sooner rather than later jumping on board. Plus, you have a giant retail attention on this. So,
great analysis. I agree with what you're saying here. Very clearly that there's a lot of probabilities. And so I think the audience need to choose your own probabilities of what will happen. But I agree with you that, it's a higher probability in 15 months from now that we're going to get a lot of this resolved, and it's going to be going forward. I'm pretty confident about it myself. Thank you so much, Joe. Follow Joe on his both YouTube channel, right? And your X account. And then you've got a website called pioneerlands.net. It's a free community. Check it out. Tesla investors. Yeah. Thank you very much.
And everyone excited about AGI, by the way. So it's not just Tesla, it's about the future of AGI and how we, come together and do something about it, because it's going to be a little interesting
it's the most important thing that's ever happened to humanity ever. So
exactly.
If you're not already, you better start to dip your toe and understand a lot about AGI now. It's going to affect every single one of them all of us. And sooner than we realize. Thank you so much, Joe. That was fun. Appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Herbert. This was great.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.